Hello, everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie. Welcome to our last episode of Double A Month. Asinine, absurd, and airheaded April.
Woohoo! It's
You're just
the
happy.
last one.
You're just happy that I'm not going to be saying that anymore.
Because it's asinine, absurd, and airheaded.
You know what? I spent minutes on that.
I know. In the bathroom, we remember.
And I actually was taking a shower. Just a little FYI, I was taking a shower.
Oh, okay. Acting like you're getting clean. I'm loving how you're just trying to turn this whole story around.
I am. Did I tell you about the show I've been binge watching? I actually finished it, called The Trust on Netflix.
Nope.
Okay.
You did not.
So it's basically a group that get together and there's a money prize at the end. And the theory is to have everybody share the money and they do things to build the money. It's a very diverse group, from young to a 70-year-old retired woman. And it's somewhere in the tropics somewhere, because this giant house that they're all staying in is by the beach. They have a pool, it's the whole house that they do when they have these shows.
So is it like a reality show?
Yeah, it's a reality show.
Oh, okay.
But it was only, I want to say, like 8 episodes. One of Netflix little shows that they do.
Okay, cool.
But anyway, they have the interviews that they do. And this 70-year-old woman was having her interview and she's sitting there talking and she was all excited because she had an accomplishment. I guess something she's been striving for. I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be something about the trust, something she's done on the show, some personal epiphany that she's had. But no, this woman is talking about she was wearing her bathing suit and she had to go to the restroom and she pulled her bathing suit to the side and she tinkled and she didn't get any pee on her hand or her bathing suit. She was so excited. And she starts cracking up and then she goes, "Oh, no, you need to delete this off of Netflix." As she's saying this, she's cracking up. She kind of turns in her chair and she farts and then starts cracking up again and goes, "You know what they call that? That's called multitasking."
Sounds like an interesting show.
It was pretty interesting. It was just one of those shows you watch when you don't really want to use your brain.
I get stuck on those too because, yeah, like you said, they're no-brainers. But hey, I also would be excited if I was able to pull it to the side and not get any pee anywhere on me. That's a pretty exciting thing.
I don't know if you can actually do it normally and not get any pee on you.
Yeah, that's interesting lady.
And I just thinking, is it bad that I thought that was hysterical? My bad thoughts.
No, it is hysterical. And there's a little truth behind it. So
there you go.
Speaking of having bad thoughts, you made me think of something. So I'm going to tell you a little story.
Okay.
The other day, so I have been going to Costco more lately because I'm a little closer to it with my new job. And I bought the dog's new dog food. I like to give them soft food every once in a while. So I got new dog food, cans of dog food, and I popped one open the other day, and it was like Kirkland's chicken and rice, I think. Mm-hmm. And I popped open the can, and let me tell you, it smelled so good. I was like, I took a minute to just smell it like, wow, why does it smell so good? It smelled delicious. So,
how long has it been since you've cooked?
Right. It hasn't been a long time since I've eaten. It's just been a long time since I've cooked. But my naughty thought was I kept smelling it just like, wow, this just took me by surprise. And I kept thinking, if I sauteed up a few onions and threw in a can of this, I could serve it to my husband as meatloaf. He'd never know.
You know what his biggest complaint would be? This isn't beef, it's chicken.
He would just be going, "Can I get some more sauce, please?"
Oh, poor guy.
No, but I did. I thought, I understand why sometimes we hear that, people eat this stuff because it did smell good. I will say that.
We use farmer's dog. It's got like peas and carrots and all kinds of stuff in it.
Yeah, I'm still doing cans, but hey, they're lucky to get that.
That's right. There are dogs starving in the world.
And my dogs are treat whores. You know, they must get 5 treats or more a day, and they get good treats. They get like real duck jerky, real chicken jerky. So might be a little cheaper with the dog food, but Mama's real, real nice with the treats.
That's what they say. Word on the street.
Don't feel sorry for them.
She's good with her treats.
That's right. So what's your story about today, Miss Blondie?
Well, my story is kind of a little old, a little new, and it's about hijacking, actually. I thought it was interesting. All right. I thought it was interesting because the main story that I'm going to tell is about an Italian guy, and he's hot.
I'm looking at the picture of him that you sent, and he is pretty cute. He's more your version of hot than my version of hot. We have definitely different taste in men. We always have.
We have different tastes in everything.
Yes, we do.
That's why we get along so well.
That's right. I don't want what you have, and you don't want what I have.
But we're happy for each other that we have those things.
That's right. That's what real friends do. And behind your back, I go, ooh, but then I go, yay, you.
My whole life. Literally my whole life. So this story, it's just about the way the world of travel has changed. And it was taking place in 1969, and it's definitely a different time then than it is now. Before bag searches and screenings, before metal detectors and body scans, and before every little item that you bring on the plane was weighed and measured and then banned. You can't even hide things in what my husband likes to call the vault, aka my bra, anymore. Especially since now we have to stand in that scanning glass chamber on those little yellow footprints with your arms raised and not moving for 3 seconds. The time of just walking on the plane is long gone.
Long gone. And even though that's supposed to make it easier, that stupid little, looks like you're getting an x-ray thing, I always feel like they can see what's underneath, like they can see you naked or something.
Exactly. It's like, can you tell me if I've got a disease or something while you're doing that?
And I'm probably speaking for a lot of our listeners right now when after all that, I'm so glad you clarified what the vault was, because we were scared.
Okay, don't be gross. It's a bra.
Just, hey, you said it all. The vault.
The
I was
vault.
like, what the heck is that? I don't think I want to know.
I like my vault. Leave me alone. But in the 1960s and 70s, you were able to bring on weapons, guns, and even bombs on the plane. Because of this, hijackings were not uncommon and, in fact, a normal way of life. Airlines often gave in to the hijackers' demands, hoping that all the crew and passengers could land safely and be released. According to the FAA, in the 1960s, there were 100 attempts of hijackings involving U.S. aircraft. 77 were successful and 23 were unsuccessful.
Okay, that's crazy. That's
Right.
a 77% success rate. It's insane.
Yep. Most hijackers had one agenda: to get to Cuba. Why Cuba? Well, some were looking for a better life, some were escaping time in prison, while others were eager to please Fidel Castro and give him a gift of an American plane. Castro thought the Americans that took the planes were spies. So instead of the riches they imagined, they were interrogated at length by the security police, then sent to the sugarcane fields to work.
That's funny. Totally backfired.
Although it didn't stop Castro from earning money from the planes, he would charge the airlines $7,500 to return the planes. How nice of him, thinking of others.
Right? Such a sweetheart. I remember hearing about a lot of hijackings, but I had no idea it was all to get to Cuba. No shade on Cuba, but who would freely choose communism? Look at all the people who are literally dying to get out. That makes no sense at all.
Well, they were dying to go work, apparently.
Crazy. And they did in the sugarcane fields.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to sing that song, Sugar, dun, 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 dun. Oh, no, okay, never mind.
I'm going to take your mic away. I'm going to mute you. So there were exceptions to the destination of the hijacked planes. One of them was when an intoxicated oil worker rushed a DC-3 at Chico, California airport. When asked for his ticket, he said, "This is my ticket." He pulled out a gun and shot the attendant. He then climbed into the cockpit, told the captain he wanted to go to Smackover, Arkansas, and I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere, but I'll be good. And when the pilot explained that he couldn't take off while the door was open, he shot him in the head. The co-pilot wrestled the gun away and held the hijacker down while authorities arrived. The reason he wanted to go to Smackover was to visit his estranged wife. I think it's a little excessive if you ask me.
You think?
The good news was that both shooting victims survived, but the captain was blinded for the rest of his life.
Oh, that's really sad.
But I mean, what the heck? Aren't there easier ways to get to Smackover? I can't help it.
Well, I guess he just needed to get the frack over to smack over.
Mute. Where's the mute button?
You can't do it without me, okay?
I could try. So this story is about a specific hijacking that took place on October 31st, 1969, by one man, an Italian born in Melito, Irpino, Italy in 1950, by the name of Raffaele Minichiello.
I'm impressed. And I'm actually surprised that you picked this story just based on the challenge that you're going to have to say that poor guy's name, which, by the way, you will need to say his first name and last name each time solely for our entertainment.
What? What are you talking about? I think my headset just went out. I didn't hear a word you just said.
Whatever.
Escaping poverty and a town destroyed by earthquake, Raphael and his family immigrated to the U.S., specifically Seattle, when he was 14 years old. Raphael went to school in Seattle, where he was made fun of because of his accent, but was intelligent and good-looking. His favorite class was shop because he didn't have to talk and loved working with his hands.
You know, I took wood shop, as a matter of fact, in junior high school, and I loved it, even though back then it was mainly for boys. But I made a duck-shaped paper holder that had like a clothespin mouth so you could clip it up and down, and you could put whatever you wanted to hold in it. It was super adorable.
Well, aren't you talented?
We all made them, by the way.
Well, isn't your whole class talented? And see, here's where we differ once again. In middle school, I took metal shop, and I even made a spice rack.
Look at you. Spicy back then, spicy now.
He was proud of his new adopted country and hoped one day he would become an American citizen. At age 17, he enlisted in the Marine Corps. Raphael was shipped off to Vietnam at age 18. It was very traumatic for him, and everyone for that matter. It was nothing but killing and more killing. He didn't understand, and never had time to rest or process it all. But his time in Vietnam came to an end when he got hurt. He returned back to his home base, Camp Pendleton, California, with an injury and a Purple Heart.
Geez, he had only been in the U.S. for 3, maybe 4 years, and they sent him to Vietnam? Let the guy get settled in for a minute. I mean, where were our manners?
Well, it was wartime, so any able body, I guess.
Wow.
While Raphael was in Vietnam, he had been sending money to a Marine savings fund. He had collected $800, but when he got back to his base, only $600 was in his account. He was planning to return to Italy, but because he was shorted, he would not be able to purchase the ticket. Raphael raised concerns with his superior officers and requested the $200 he felt he was owed. They denied his request and dismissed his complaint.
$200 was a lot of money, and I can't believe they just denied his request and dismissed it. Where'd the money go? Nobody did an investigation into that?
No, not that I know of, or not that I read anyway.
That's crazy.
He felt he was being dishonored by the Marines, so one night, in his frustration, he worked up his courage by drinking 8 beers. Then he broke into the post exchange on the base and stole $200 worth of merchandise. But what usually happens an hour after drinking? You're drunk. And he ends up falling asleep inside the store. He was caught the next morning. So note to self, do all your bad deeds a half an hour after drinking, and don't wait that hour.
So that you're fully drunk. And this is curious to me because if he was still inside the store, he didn't actually steal anything.
True, but then he was breaking and entering.
That's true.
Stealing is an offense punishable by court-martial. On the morning of 19-year-old Raphael's court-martial, he decides to go AWOL and continue with his plan to return home to Italy. He dressed in camouflage, grabbed a bag, loaded it with his disassembled rifle, a knife, and 250 rounds of ammunition, and a Coke. Then took a bus to LAX. Once he got to the airport, he purchased a ticket for TWA Flight 85, headed for San Francisco. There are two stories on how he got the rifle on the plane. The first was that security just weighed his bag and didn't search it. The second was, to avoid security, Raphael put his good looks to use and flirted with a few flight attendants to let him and his carry-on board with them through the secondary entrance. The first seems more logical, but I like the thought of him being all, "Hey, ladies." When I say he was good looking, I've seen pictures, and he is said to look like a young Antonio Banderas.
Yeah, from the picture you have on here, he looks exactly like him. Like I would have thought that was him if you'd have just said it.
It's actually kind of creepy how much he looks like him.
It is.
The plane takes off, and Raphael orders 2 shots of whiskey and proceeds to down them. He gathers his bag and goes into the restroom to assemble his rifle. With the rifle in hand, he came out of the restroom and pointed it at a flight attendant, to which she said, "Sir, you're not supposed to have that." He asked her to take him to the cockpit, but he was at the back of the plane, and they had to walk the entire length down the aisle.
I like how the flight attendant went all Karen on his butt. I said, "Not today, sir. Not today."
She was doing her job.
Absolutely.
The passengers looked at what was going on and said, "Is this really happening?" Reaching the cockpit door, he knocks and demands the pilots to turn the plane towards New York. At least he was polite and knocked.
He was probably scared of the flight attendant.
Probably. There were 40 passengers on the plane, 5 of which were a pop group called Harper's Bazaar. An interesting note about that is that they did a cover of Simon and Garfunkel's song, the 59th Street Bridge song, also known as Feeling Groovy.
Oh, yeah, it's a good song.
It's a good
an old song, but it's a good song.
I didn't know it was called the 59th Street Bridge song.
I didn't know what you were talking about until you said AKA. I was like, I don't know that song.
Now, at that time, part of the flight attendant's job was that TWA staff would have to undergo annual training or updates. These would include how to respond during emergencies, also covering hijackings, since they had become so common. They taught them how to remain calm, along with how not to fall in love with the hijacker. The reasoning behind this was that they were told hijackers would try and gain sympathy from the crew, which is now known as Stockholm Syndrome. So basically stay calm and look away from the hot Italian hijacker.
Yeah, I don't know. You could have Brad Pitt in there with a rifle, and he's not looking so hot anymore with that gun in his hands. I don't get it.
I'm getting the impression that it was just so common, though, that, it didn't bother them because the hijackers had their agenda and just get them to where they wanted to be. It's a lot different now than it was then.
I can't remember anything specific, but there were people killed during these hijackings.
Oh, I'm sure there were, but it was just became commonplace.
How sad, huh?
Mm-hmm. Now back to Flight 85. Since the plane's original destination was from LAX to San Francisco, it had to stop and refuel in Denver. The captain explained that he did not have the experience to fly internationally and that they would need replacement pilots. Raphael agreed, but he demanded that all the lights be off at the Denver airport and said if there was no trouble during the landing and refueling, he would release the passengers. I did read something or see something about this specific pilot, and he said that he had 20 years experience flying. He lied.
Well, of course, I knew that as soon as you said it. It was like, oh, look at him getting himself out and leaving everybody else behind.
No, he actually stayed on. He did stay on, too.
Oh, he did? I thought he said he couldn't fly internationally.
But he stayed on to, be a backup.
Oh, okay. Well, I take it back. He's not a bad guy after all.
While refueling, Raffaele told the captain and crew that his final destination was Italy and not just New York. He wanted the pilots and one flight attendant to stay on board. Once refueled, Raffaele let the passengers and most of the crew go. The plane continued to New York with 5 people on board, the 3 pilots, 1 flight attendant, and Raffaele. He told the captain to instruct authorities that no one was to come near the plane and it would be refueled as far away from the terminal as possible. They arrived in New York, but the FBI had a plan to hold the takeoff for about an hour to give agents dressed in maintenance worker uniforms a chance to gain access into the plane. A couple did through the hold.
What's a hold?
It's under the plane. I want to say it's maybe like where they put the luggage.
Oh, okay. And you can get into the plane from there?
I don't know how it worked, but that's where they said they went.
Okay.
The FBI were approaching the plane when the captain told them to get away. Raffaele was getting anxious and panicked because they weren't listening, and also realized they weren't fueling the plane either. So he fired a shot into the ceiling, causing the FBI agents to back off. The agents in the hold also got out when they heard the shot. I would think they should have stayed on and, tried to subdue him. Kind of sissy lala, if you ask me.
Definitely, Sissy Lala. It's your job to take that guy down.
Exactly.
And how was the plane able to fly if it had a hole in the ceiling?
I thought the same thing, and I don't know if it actually went all the way through. One thing said it was in the fuselage, the other one said it was in the ceiling. Either way, it wasn't enough to keep the plane from taking off.
Huh. Interesting. That doesn't sound like a very powerful rifle then.
I don't know enough about rifles.
Neither do I. But he should have brought a more impressive one to take over a whole plane. That's all I'm saying.
Might have been a BB gun.
Right. It's all pew, pew.
Oh my God. Read that 70-year-old lady farting right now. So the 2 replacement pilots got on the plane and Flight 85 took off again with no additional fuel. The captain said, quote, "We sat with that boy for 6 hours and had seen him go from practically a raving maniac to a fairly complacent and intellectual young man with a sense of humor. And then these idiots irresponsibly made up their minds about how to handle this boy on the basis of no information. And the good faith we had built up for almost 6 hours was completely destroyed." End quote.
Ooh, I get it, but if they had done nothing, he would have been mad about that as well.
I don't know. We're assuming.
And how are the FBI agents supposed to know that the Italian hijacker is cool? Like, who's going to think that?
By this time, the hijacking had reached the media and was national news. Raffaele was a media sensation, especially with his exotic good looks. The press was all over this. Not able to get fuel in New York, they landed in Bangor, Maine, where reporters swarmed the terminal. It took over 70 police officers to ensure the press would stay away. For the 4th time, the plane was back in the air. Trying to keep everything calm, the captain went to speak to Raffaele. They chatted about life, relationships, and being in the armed services. The captain even recalled that the gun was sitting between them, but at no time did any of the crew try and take the gun because they weren't sure how the hijacker would react. The flight attendant that stayed also spent time talking to Raffaele and found him easy to talk to. I'm thinking, yeah, you're just sitting there staring at him, giving him the up down. But what are you going to do?
He's too cute to be a killer.
Right? They chatted about their families, and she even felt comfortable enough to sleep a little during the 6-hour flight from Maine to Ireland, where another refueling had to take place. After getting more fuel in Ireland, the plane headed to Rome. Before they landed, Raffaele had one last demand. The plane would be parked far away from the terminal, and a car with an unarmed police official was to be there waiting for them. Right before they landed, Raffaele said to the captain, quote, "I've given you guys an awful lot of trouble," end quote. The captain replied, quote, "That's all right. We don't take it personally," end quote.
Okay, why is everybody so friendly? This is very weird.
TWA Flight 85 lands per Raphael's instructions. A car approaches, and a deputy customs official meets him. Raphael tells the captain, quote, "So long, Don. I'm sorry I caused you all this trouble," end quote. He was definitely remorseful. He liked Don, the captain.
I guess so.
He then gets the captain's home address in Kansas City so he could write and tell him what happened after they separated. Now, don't you think you would, give him the wrong information?
That is so weird. Hey, can you give me your home address so I can, write you a letter later? We could be pen pals.
It sounds like they had a great rapport. That's all I got to say. It sounds really like they got along well.
These are two very unique individuals.
Raphael asked the deputy customs officials to take him to Naples. Police cars trailed, but lost the car Raphael was in when they traveled down some narrow roads. The car comes to a dead end, and they both get out. Raphael panics and takes off running. Ditching his camouflage, he finds some clothes and changes. He ran into a church full of parishioners at morning mass. Unfortunately, the clothes he had changed into was a vest and shorts, which made him stand out among the well-dressed congregation.
They're looking around going, that guy looks like, I don't know, maybe a hijacker. Why is he in here?
That's exactly what they thought. Due to all the media coverage, he was recognized and police were called. He was arrested. Raphael asked, quote, "Countrymen, why are you arresting me?" End quote. In 1969, the New York Times reported it to be the world's longest and most spectacular hijacking. It was 18 hours long and spanned 6,900 miles.
Wow.
Raphael became an instant sensation and a folk hero in Italy. It helped that he had brooding good looks and girls were giddy over his movie star hunkiness. He wasn't portrayed as a distraught gunman who threatened a plane full of passengers, but as a fresh-faced Italian boy who would do anything to return to his home in Italy. Quote, "He's even better than Giuliano Gemma," end quote, one 17-year-old admirer told an Italian reporter, referring to a handsome star of spaghetti westerns. "I would like to marry him," she said. I had to look it up what a spaghetti western was.
Okay, please do tell.
It's a western in Europe, mostly directed and produced by Italians.
And they're called spaghetti westerns?
I know, sounds strange.
Okay, that sounds derogatory almost.
Almost.
I don't like it.
At his trial, girls were swarming on the courthouse steps. Raphael's lawyer characterized him as the victim of an unconscionable foreign war. And I quote, "I am sure that Italian judges will understand and forgive an act born from a civilization of aircraft and war violence, a civilization which overwhelmed this uncultured peasant," end quote.
This guy can't catch a break. He's a criminal in the U.S. He's a peasant in his own country.
Right.
This poor guy, all those good looks are not doing him any good anymore.
Although he does have the girls swarming the courthouse steps.
That's true.
Raffaele Minichiello was only tried in Italy and only for crimes committed in Italian airspace. He was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison, but appealed and ultimately only served 18 months. U.S. authorities indicted Raffaele, but the Italian government would not extradite him because Italian law did not permit extradition for any offense that carried the death penalty.
And in the U.S., was it a death penalty crime?
The U.S. federal government listed 41 capital offenses that are punishable by death. The capital offenses include espionage, treason, and death resulting from aircraft hijacking. Now, in this instance, no one died, but, he may have gotten the death penalty anyway.
Interesting.
I think maybe just the thought of he could possibly get the death penalty if they extradited him.
Right.
At 21, Raphael was released from prison to crowds of cameramen and photographers. He was intimidated, yet managed to give a cocky little smile to the cameras. Upon his release, he was promised a film career as a spaghetti western star and as a model. Neither took off. He became a bartender and married the owner's daughter. It was also said at one point he opened a pizza restaurant named Hijacking.
Okay, that's funny. He is pretty charming.
He's very charming. Raffaele would be diagnosed with PTSD in 2008. He is not eligible for treatment because he received a less than honorable discharge from the military. His platoon is still campaigning to get it reversed.
Oh, so his fellow soldiers were supportive of him.
They were very, because they understand what he went through because they went through it.
Yeah, he received a Purple Heart. And I don't know. I guess every case is different. You kind of feel like what he did for our country. I mean, yes, what he did here is a crime, but give him a little break.
And nobody got killed.
And exactly, nobody got killed. And the pilot actually liked him. He has his home address.
Speaking of, one last note about Raffaele. Years later, he did get a hold of Captain Don Cook, that was the captain's name, pilot from Flight 85, and they managed to find a few other people from that flight, including a flight attendant. Raffaele wanted to explain and apologize.
Wow.
Right? Between 1971 and 2002, there were at least 10 hijackings a year, with dozens reported in many of those years. Since then, hijackings have become increasingly rare. Since 2009, there have been 5 or fewer incidents per year, and none at all in 2015, 2017, 2020, 2022, and 2023. I get the statistics, but 2020, come on. Were planes even flying?
Well, no, actually they were. People were flying during COVID.
Very carefully, I'm sure. You know what? That's right, because they had so many seats in between. The plane was like a quarter full. And
Right. And my daughter flew home from Maine. That's the only reason I even know.
Oh,
She
that's
flew
right.
home from Maine twice. Yeah.
Things have changed since 1969 hijacking-wise, but now airlines have a new threat to contend with, the birth of Kevins and Karens. In October 1995, there was a United Airlines flight bound for New York from Buenos Aires. While en route, an extremely drunk first-class passenger by the name of Gerard Finneran, 58, refused to accept that he had been cut off. Gerard, who was an investment banker, demanded more alcohol from one of the flight attendants. Refusing to serve him any longer, he decided that it was a self-service bar and became his own bartender. Once again, he was told he was not going to get any more to drink. He flipped. He pushed one and threatened a second flight attendant. He then proceeded to make demands on a third who was helping a sick passenger. Still not getting his way, this grown-ass man walked up to a service cart, climbed on, dropped his drawers, and dropped a deuce, in view of all the crew and passengers.
And I'm going to assume the deuce does not mean a new type of rum, right?
No. Then upon dismount, he stepped in his own dookie and made smelly footprints throughout the cabin. For a final childish act, he locked himself in the lavatory.
Which is where he should have been to begin with. What is these back-ass words?
I don't know if you know this, but he actually committed 5, maybe 6 federal crimes for that whole incident.
Well, please point them out.
Let's see. The one would be pushing the one flight attendant, threatening the second, disrupting the third flight attendant who was helping the sick person, obviously climbing on the cart, taking a dookie, walking through the cabin, spreading it. Yeah, these are all federal offenses you cannot do. Take notes.
So, have you ever been on a plane when a child has a dirty diaper?
Yes.
Yeah, I have. I'm always right behind the kid with the dirty diaper. Okay. And so what they do is they bring over, like for my husband and myself, they give you a bag of coffee, right? To hold under your nose, because that's supposed to make it smell better, or you don't smell it.
Neutralizes it a little bit.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, but not really. But I was just sitting here thinking, they didn't have that many coffee bags
to hand
for the
out.
entire plane. Because this grown-ass man had to take a dump right there.
Because, he's a child. Speaking of children.
He had a dump tantrum, is what he had. That's ridiculous.
The rest of the flight consisted of cleaning up feces, food service being canceled, the plane not being able to land in San Juan because they had dignitaries on board, and the crew spraying Lagerfeld cologne up and down the aisles. Once they reached New York, Finneran was arrested. I'm shocked. And ended up pleading guilty to assault and received a 2-year probation sentence. He also had to do 300 hours of community service, pay a $5,000 fine, and was ordered to pay more than $50,000 to the airline to reimburse fellow passengers for their airline tickets. I read also somewhere that he had to reimburse the airline for the cleaning fee, basically.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm glad something went down because that's ridiculous. People start doing stuff like that. You are literally a captive audience. There's nowhere you can go.
Nowhere you can go.
That's horrifying.
When Magistrate Judge Stephen Gold asked why he did it, Gerard said, quote, "I was angry," end quote. Gerard Jerry Finneran passed away in 2012 at age 76 from complications of Alzheimer's.
May he rest in peace, ease.
Okay, crazy. So there you go. Another and last asinine, absurd, and airheaded story.
Woohoo! I think I've had enough double A.
So this is why I said it?
That's right. I think we've all had our fill. Okay, it's time to get to the more serious and sophisticated killings that everybody's come to know and love.
Again, where's the mute button?
Well, that was 3 interesting stories. Thank you very much for that.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
All right. We just want our listeners to not forget to have fun, take care, and don't forget to let your grimaginations run wild. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter at grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.